Well, welcome everyone to episode 13 of the Real Profit, Real Perspective podcast, Control the Controllable. I'm Connor Malatesta, and I am joined by my favoritist co-host with the most, Ryan Bannister, owner of One Up Advisors. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, Connor. I'm just glad that I can control that I sit here with you every week and do this recording.
Do you think you're clever making a joke here about the title when we're not even, what is it, 60 seconds? You think you're funny? You are. That
You
was
got to be
great.
swift, man.
That was so topical. Look at you go. I gotta admit, we threw out this idea. Oh, I think a while ago. I think this may have been in our initial planning. I think we had it sitting at the bottom of the episode list for weeks.
Yep.
And even as of recording right now, you're better at this than I am, but I still don't fully know what it was I was expecting to talk about. It was one of those I went, control the controllable is snazzy, or that sounds, that's got a ring to it. Let's just go with that and hope I find some content along the way.
I think it's one of those things we've sprinkled in here and there to episodes, and now we're finally kind of diving in on, what we mean when we say control the controllable.
Well, you got a much better idea about this than I do. So tell us, Mr. Ryan, what do we mean by control the controllable? What are we going to spend way too much time talking about today?
I think you just hit it on the head. We are spending time on the things we can control, and that in a business sense, further the business, in a personal sense, things that don't drain your energy, things that also get you closer towards your goals.
So you mean the kind of things that we can actually affect with our day-to-day actions, and not the things that are totally outside what we are capable of impacting.
Right. And like I said just a few minutes ago, like we've sprinkled this into other episodes, and maybe it's recency, but the one that comes to mind is cash flow forecasting, because there are things you can control and there are definitely things you can't control. And I think that's why the word forecast it kind of has both a negative connotation and a little bit of a positive. I think negative because, in a forecast, you can literally make it say whatever you want.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anytime anyone has ever put any sort of forward-looking projection together, it has always been perfectly accurate. That is definitely not why every startup out there that has to put together their pitch deck for the investors. Now, I'm not much of a finance guy, but I'm pretty certain most of those pitch decks usually have revenue projections. What's that phrase they use, the hockey stick of, it's going to kind of go, that we're going to make so much money, it's going to be to the moon. Everything is going to be great. We're going to go from 500 users to 1,500 to 35 million billion in 3.5 years. That's why
that's where my head
we need
went
money.
to, was to startups. And if every startup's forecast worked out how they expected, we'd have a bunch of $1 trillion companies out here.
Every startup would be a $1 trillion business. Apple, who needs that? We've got 60 billion users in 735,000 countries.
Yep.
With the way our projections are looking, in about 15 years, we will have more users than there are atoms in the universe. That's why I need 50 grand.
Or in most cases in Silicon Valley, 50 million.
You're
more.
right. I that's the accountant in me trying to be a little too conservative. I always ask for too little. 50,000. No, we need 50 million and a yacht. The yacht is very important to our overall branding. If we don't have that yacht, we will not get our users.
The crux of this whole operation.
See, one of the things we can control is ragging on startups. Infinite content to talk about how most Silicon Valley startups are stupid stupid. But in a more real sense, I guess the idea behind this is, and I'll admit, God, do I struggle with this a lot. I'm struggling with it right now, is kind of that idea of, if I can control it and I can do something about it, then why would I worry about it? Because I'm the one that can do something about it. And if it's totally outside of my power and I can't do anything about it, well, then why would I worry about it? It's outside the realm of anything I can do. And it's
Yep.
that focus, particularly in financial matters in kind of particular for this, but I mean in life in general, it's that idea of focusing on what can you actually do instead of focusing on all the stuff that really is kind of outside of your control. And I think, considering we're recording this halfway through 2025, anyone turning on the news probably has multiple examples of don't stress out about the things that you can't control, whether people are stressing about, the war between Israel and Iran, or Ukraine and Russia, or anything else going on elsewhere, the trade wars, the a lot of the news stations love to push that because upset, scared, angry people will tune in, and then you can feed marketing to them, and then all those advertising dollars that they get are actually spent on something. But the whole point they're trying to do is just to keep you upset, when for the most part, if you're listening to this, odds are you cannot affect the war in Ukraine, or the conflict between Iran and Israel, or the price of the stock markets. If you can, you shoot us an email, because what the like, I've got questions. I want to know how you actually do that, and you are way beyond the scope of anything we should be talking about. We should learn from you as the master.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where my head went at first with this. Is a conversation I have with every client is we can't control market returns. We can control how much you're spending, how much you're saving, and the time that you're in the market. But there are very few people out there who can actively control the S&P 500.
Anyone who can actively control the S&P 500 is not listening to this right now, so everything we say
Yep.
does not matter.
Yep.
Yes, Elon Musk can somewhat impact the overall S&P 500 returns. So can Warren Buffett or any of these other people. But guess what? They're not you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
It's it's always a difficult thing for me to, in a way, kind of let go, because I absolutely hate when I don't feel like I've got control over things, or what I am dealing with, or the problems that I'm having are due to things that are outside of my control. Weirdly enough, for me at least, since this is the real perspective part of the things. Last episode was the real profit part. Let's get into the real perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually stress about the things that at least for me, that I can control and do stuff about. So, for a lot of running the business or whatever, any decisions I'm making, because I can make those decisions, that doesn't really stress me out. My stress is usually when I'm in circumstances where all I can do is react. And to me, that's where things get difficult, because I'm kind of stuck in a waiting pattern for what's the next thing that's going to happen. I can't predict what's coming next. I'm not the one that's kind of, driving a lot of what's happening. I'm stuck just kind of waiting. So, as you are far wiser and more experienced than I am,
Oh,
what would your advice to me be in this situation?
that's a tough one.
It's okay. Take all the time you want on this one. We'll just cut out the pause and post.
Yeah. Well, I think as business owners, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate because a lot of you are business owners as well. I think there's the tendency for us to think that we can control everything. that happens in the business, especially as it relates to you and your own activities, like sales, for example. I think the misconception or the mindset change that can happen there is I want to get, $10,000 new dollars of sales, of revenue this month. I want to get 10 new clients this month or this year. But those aren't things you can really control, right? You can control the inputs that go into those things, like your activities, how many people are you calling, or how many networking events are you going to, things like that. So I think it's more of a reframing of how you look at things within your business. And, another example could be employees. I mean, you can't directly control when somebody is working on something or how hard they are working on that thing. You can to a point, but I think that's what we're running into a lot of nowadays with the shift to more remote work and project based type of work, where we're not, most of us, standing in factories anymore on an assembly line, like putting X number of widgets together each day. That still
Mhm.
happens. But for a lot of us, we are doing more intangible things that can happen at different times of the day. So, not to go down the whole rabbit hole, but I think that is one. I think that's one shift a lot of people can make, just sort of reframing how you're looking at things and focusing on inputs into your goals versus the things that you cannot control.
So would you say, in a way, it's less about discrete outcomes, right? If I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, then this will happen. Where it's less about kind of a direct cause and effect for everything we do, as opposed to, in a way, a lot of times it's more a game of statistics or a game of odd chance, really. Where, you mentioned sales. I've seen this firsthand. Every time you have a sales call, you can't control whether the other person will go through or not, but you can do what you are able to basically weight the odds in your favor as much as you can that they will want to go through. You can't
Yeah.
control their brain and say you are going to do this, but you can impact the odds that they do it by either, great sales calls, other extenuating circumstances, the fear of government intervention, things like that, to kind of weight it in your favor and then kind of play the odds. Would you say that's kind of more what you're referring to here?
100%. So, turning it into that numbers game, like if you say you're a construction company and you know that for every 10 bids you put out there, you get 5 of actual work. I don't know if that's relevant to a good close rate or not, but at that point, you can say, okay, I can't directly control whether this person or this person is going to say yes to the bid. But if I put 100 bids out there, I know I'm going to get 50% of the work that I'm bidding on. Or if I'm not, if I'm below my rate, I need to change something in the process because maybe I'm not selling it the right way. Like maybe I need to change something in that process. Or if you're above it, maybe your prices are too low, something like that.
I think one of the hardest things has been for me to realize over the last few years really is how much at times it really isn't up to you. And I have to admit, it usually feels the worst when you go on basically a losing streak.
Oh yeah.
When you're doing, either bids or sending proposals or having sales calls and you just keep getting hit over and over with no. So, and I know you deal with a lot of clients on the personal side. So, have they ever come to you with situations like that and asked for advice on kind of how to manage the kind of rejection aspect, or that constant things aren't going the way we want them to, and it feels like nothing I do is actually mattering. Is that something that clients talk to you about?
Yeah, and funny enough, the first example that comes to mind is another advisor, a friend of mine I was talking to last week who was having an issue like that. You know, he's had a lot of prospect calls recently, and there's been more no's than there has yeses. It's like you're alluding to with the statistics, like I could sit here and flip a coin 100 times and on average it should be 50-50, but there might be 20 tails first and then you finally hit a heads, you know? So at at the risk of sounding kind of flippant, you know, you have to keep going because I don't know, I think of like that meme of like somebody mining for gold, you know, like where the picture of gold is like right there and they're like an inch away from it.
I think I usually see that meme used in the context on Wall Street bets of 90% of traders quit right before they make it big.
Yeah.
Remember, guys, you too, just keep placing those bets. It's got to pay off eventually, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, full disclosure, that is not financial advice. Do not go and spend all of your money. There are much easier ways to go and lose all of your money. You know, like calling us up and saying, "Hey, I've got $10,000 I need to make disappear. How can I do that?" And I'm like, "That's cool. I'll send you a bill. We can
There are
make
much
money just."
easier and more fun ways to lose your money than gambling it in the in the stock market for sure.
No, no, no. The I read it in a book. The only true way to financial success is taking out a home equity line of credit and wagering all of it on 0-day expiration stock options on the
Oh yeah.
S&P 500. And then
I got to get my hands on that book.
I don't think they're allowed to issue it in print anymore. No, it really the whole constant really the I think the idea behind the controllable is I at least have found when I start to hyperfixate too much on the stuff that I can't do a fucking thing about, that's usually when things start to feel the worst because by their very nature, you
Yep.
can't do anything about it. And so you're stuck focusing on things that you, by their very nature, cannot make better. So there's no sense of progress, no sense of achievement, no sense of anything as you're sitting there trying to, you know, scream at God to make changes. And like most things, it doesn't work. You know, you can yell at the universe all you want. Universe is gonna do what the universe is gonna do. It doesn't give a shit.
Old man yells at cloud.
I mean, we've all had those days where you just want to go outside and just scream out, God, fuck this shit. I'm so
Yep.
tired of it.
Yeah,
But
and that
it
actually gets kind of into a question I had for you,
uh-oh.
related to, you know, fixating on things that you can't control, or because we all do it, like it happens all the time. How do you, or how have you, I don't know if you have an example or not in the past, like had brought that self-awareness to yourself, if that makes sense? Like how do you pull yourself out of that?
You mean the kind of shitty feeling from when you're sitting there going, things aren't going well and I can't really make a whole lot of change right now and I'm waiting on other stuff to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, I think like sort of the situation I was mentioning, like, you know, if you are on a losing streak of something, and I don't know, any example you might think of, but like how do you bring yourself back to controlling the controllable versus staying kind of stuck in that zone?
Oh man. I kind of know exactly what you're referring to. I My tendency to kind of keep things going is to not this anecdote doesn't end with I just go out, take a walk in nature, and that gives me the ability to reframe everything I've looked at, and I feel so much better, and my central energies are lined up, my chakras are in line, and I can go out and I can put the energy into the world that I want the world to give to me. Usually it's more like, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep going until something eventually changes. Either my losing streak is gonna break, or we're gonna find out which one will outlast the other.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I don't I tend to get by at times in stuff like that more from kind of dogged stubbornness than a like really going out and doing that more healthy, reframing, to be, totally honest.
Yeah.
Usually what does it for me is that eventually the odds do tilt back into my favor, and then it just takes usually a couple wins to go, okay, I haven't completely forgotten how the fuck to do sales.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
go through 6, 7, 8 sales calls, none of it pans out. You're sitting there going, am I missing something? Is something going on? That self-doubt starts to creep in. Doesn't matter, because it's always there waiting for opportunities, where every time you've got success, things start to turn it. It's like a damn weed always trying to get back in. You got to constantly prune it. You can fire torch the area, but it doesn't really matter. It's going to get back anyway, because weeds are hard to kill permanently. But then you start to have a couple successes, and then okay, we're doing all right again. And I at least in my experience, which I'm totally honest, still pretty young, it's more of a kind of up and down, or you could say like a pendulum type, where you're gonna have that swing from things are good, things are bad, things are good, things are in the middle. It's okay. We're either on the swing towards things being better, or now here comes the slide. Things are about to get shitty again. And it
Yeah.
I guess the only way I can say is to just stupidly keep going on. That's about the
Yep.
only thing that really has gotten me through it, through everything, for going through the, starting the business from nothing, and all that, and dealing with everything, is to just it kind of going back to, I think, the episode we did on what does progress feel like, where
That's what I was just thinking of. This it reminded me of another episode, but I couldn't remember which one. And it seemed like I'm picking up on themes across episodes here already that we're figuring out.
man, we're so good at having through lines on episodes that we definitely planned from the very beginning. Anyone listening to this, when we have about 400 episodes recorded and everything, there's a solid
Yep.
theme through everything. We're going to look like fucking geniuses. Definitely not making it up every week that goes by. Like, oh yeah, totally plan to do that. Much like a writer, when you start reading fanfic online, or conspiracies, Game of Thrones, all this stuff, and you're sitting there going, oh shit, that was a good idea. I should have thought of
Yep.
that. Glad that worked out the way it did. I never would have thought of that on my own. But yeah, it really, yeah, controlling the controllable, I think, is an aspect of what is making progress really feel like, or what does progress really feel like, because that ultimately at its core is about the only thing that we can do, is focus on the things that we can affect change over,
Yep.
which is such a simple thing to say, and anyone hearing that will go, well, yeah, of course, we just affect the things we can and let go of the things we don't. But I don't know, I sometimes find it helpful to just remind myself that, okay, this is it. This is all I can do right now, and I'm just gonna have to let everything else go and see what happens. Otherwise, I will drive myself fucking insane trying to go outside and scream at the clouds. Can
Yeah.
be cathartic,
Yeah.
though. I will say that if you're really finding yourself on that downturn, just go scream at nature. Although I think I saw a news article at some point where, who knows if it was true or not, but there were these groups or whatever you could pay, and they'd all go into the woods. I think it was particularly like post 2024 election, and like scream into the woods or something. Little known fact, and this is actually Controlling the controllable in the money that you spend is that it is actually free to go into the woods and scream. They actually can't stop you from doing that. You don't have to pay somebody to just go out into nature and scream incoherently. You can do that on your own.
Good to
I had
know.
a
Good to know.
I had a point I was trying to make originally. I don't fucking remember what it is right now. This is what
No,
we
I
get
mean
for recording on an off day.
that's sort of what I was trying to get at with my question, is we've all been, I think, in the place where we are fixated on something we think we can control, and it's a combo of stubbornness and just like your only option in some cases is just to keep going. And I think a lot of the times too, it's maybe like we talked about in the accountability episode, having someone that you trust like be able to help you in these things too, right? Like,
It is always helpful if you could have somebody that you can sanity check yourself of how are things doing, and they can either say, "Yeah, no, you're fucked. You should be stressed out about it," which
mhm.
gotta say, sometimes that is helpful to have somebody confirm, "No, it's as bad as you think it is. You aren't overreacting."
Yeah, 100%.
And other times somebody to kind of reframe, "Yeah, you're stressed about this, but look, here's what's going on. You're gonna be okay. Here's what's gonna happen." I think the one thing I have been really learning is sometimes the biggest control that you can exercise in a situation is actually by removing yourself from it entirely. That there does become a point where the best thing you can do for yourself is to cut and run. It's a it's not really something to get like more specific what those look like, but there are times where a lot of things that may be stressing you will be truly related to things that are outside of your control. And while you can't control those factors, you can control your exposure to those factors. And sometimes getting those outside opinions for somebody to say, yeah, no, this is what you need to do and what's going to be for the best is what you got to do, and you can exert your control over basically by removing yourself from the situation,
Yeah.
which is I don't know, for me it was a weird one to kind of wrap my head around how all that works. I know there's probably people that go, oh no, I totally get it, but it was, I don't know, it was a bit of a struggle for me.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of I think it's from I heard it from Tim Ferriss, if you know him, like the author of 4 Hour Work Week and a couple other books out there. But there's an exercise that he does called fear setting, and it's kind of related to like goal setting in a way, but it's almost the opposite. Like when you're looking at a decision you have to make, or I don't know, something you want to do, like starting a business, for example, like, or if you're in business but you're not doing so hot, like maybe your fear is like, I'm going to run out of money, the company's going to die. Like, the point being of the exercise that when you can kind of list out like what the costs are of a decision or an action, or or the cost of doing nothing, it's never really as bad as you think it's going to be. Or even
Mhm.
if it is, like, it's not going to end your life or something like that, like maybe there's some things, but um,
Well, is
you know,
it like one of those of uh, like a thought experiment? You go, okay, yep, the worst has happened. It's gonna happen. Here's what's gonna happen. Now what? Is that kind of the
yeah,
the idea behind it of pretty much putting yourself in that situation of your worst case scenario just happened. Everything is foobar. Everything you've been working towards or whatever you're doing is fucked up. Okay, here we are. Now what?
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Not just like ignoring those things, but giving them a place and then keeping them there. Or, It makes me think too of like one thing I heard from a from a real estate investor at one point. He's like, okay, well, I've got all these properties and I'm just going to keep going because ultimately if I fail, like all they make you do is just give the houses back.
Such a cavalier attitude.
Right?
I'm sure there's somebody listening going, I wish that the worst thing, oh, we'll just give the house back. Oh, that's so.
Okay.
Although technically there are worse things to have happen.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's kind of a way of confronting your fears, I guess, which does help kind of recontextualize things. And then also sometimes when you're actually going through it, you go, oh wow, this is way worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But now you're in it. Now you have a little bit of control over what you do kind of going forward. And that sometimes that little bit to really hit, rock bottom can sometimes be in a way give new perspective on things. Now,
Yeah.
full disclosure, I've never hit rock bottom like a lot of other people have. So before anyone starts going, well, I get it, not saying anything like that, but when things get shitty, it can help recontextualize everything and go, oh, I thought I was stressed about this, but at least now nobody's dying. So I feel so much better. I'm not worried about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we've talked about like extreme ownership and sort of Jocko Willink's point of views on some of these things. And it brings me back to that too. Like if you get yourself in this situation and something happens that you can't control, it's like, okay, great. Now what? Like take that into account, but keep going. Right.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those, yep, it fucking sucks, but you're here. What are you going to do now? You've got to keep moving. If you're not dead, you got to move somewhere. So what are we going to, what are we going to do to get ourselves out of this situation? What are we going to do moving forward? Because you can't just, unfortunately, life itself usually doesn't even let you sit still at
Nope.
times. It goes, oh, you tired? Ah, that sucks to be you. Guess what you get to deal with now? That's right, you just sat on fire ants. Breakup doesn't seem too bad now. You're covered in fire ants. That just recontextualized all your problems.
Right.
Breakup, who cares about that? You're covered in ants. I think I'm going to go sell a self-help book on how to solve all of your problems and recontextualize everything, where all you've got to do is just take a trip down south, go lay down in the lawn for about 15 minutes and wait for the fire ants to just crawl all over.
Yeah.
And then every single problem you have ever had will seem minuscule in comparison as you scream because you're covered in fire ants. Something, this is shock therapy or fear therapy or something. I don't know. I'm not a licensed therapist, so take everything I say with massive grains of salt if it's not directly related to business finances. It's like that guy that went out and what was it? Got stung or bit or whatever by some of the most painful animals out there, or the bugs and all that. I think it was like coyote something or whatever, and it was just watching that, going, you know what? Kudos to that guy for yeah, this is the this is the African death stinging ant. If it stings you, you will want to just kill yourself. And then he goes and gets stung by it to rate how bad the pain is. Like, you know what, man, that's kudos to him. He is built different. If somebody said, hey, do you want to shove your hand into a mitt filled with painfully biting and stinging ants, do you want to do that as a rite of passage? Be like, no, I'm good. I'll get exiled from the tribe here. I'll pass on this one. You guys win. You win. I'm nope. I'm going to control the fact that I don't have to shove my hand into a beehive by walking away. Boy, you can really tell I don't have a through line of this one.
Just waiting to see where that was going.
Me too. Boy, was I waiting for the punchline. I figured I should probably give up. Something, something, focus on the things that are possible. Something, something, don't stick body parts where they shouldn't be. And something, something, walk away if somebody says, hey, do you want to get stung by a bunch of bugs? Episode 13. Oh man, yeah, I don't. Unlike, I think I used all my creative energy on the cash flow episode. I'm a little afraid of just regurgitating the same points over and over. Of just, focus on the stuff you can, let go of the stuff you can't, and every time you feel that that's getting screwed up, and just, I don't know, distract yourself from focusing on the stuff that you can't. And I don't know. I've rambled enough. It's your turn.
No, I think you hit it on the head, man. I mean, this episode comes from, like we said, kind of sprinkled in from others, and I think we really just wanted to dig in a little deeper to really say what we mean with that when we say control the controllable, just so it's not some buzzword or catchphrase we have in episodes and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Or
Control the
like
control.
you said earlier, it's like, well, yeah, obviously we should only focus on the things we can control. Well, everyone's got the thing or two that they're doing that you can't control. So
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, you can think of it as the fact that if you're listening to this to try and, better yourself a little bit or learn from other people, you have actually tried to take control of the things that you can control, which is educating yourself, or going back to some of our, like you mentioned, Jocko, earlier, that whole extreme ownership idea for what are, you are always in control of your own actions and what you do. So going forward, as these things happen, how do you control how you react to the situation?
yep,
What is it, things that you do? And it, in a weird way, when you really do recontextualize much of life as a, what is it? Not that life is happening at you, right? Or let me see if I can remember. It was a motivational video I was listening to while I was getting a workout in. That the idea being not that things are just happening to you, but that you are, with everything you do, working to create a little bit of what life will look like for you, right? Kind of remembering that no matter how bad shit gets, we still maintain that that bit of control over everything, over what we can do in the moment to respond, to act to the thing that's happening, really, no matter how kind of horrendous or terrible it may be. We still always are in control of our own actions, even if everything else is going to shit around us.
yeah, yep.
I think that is a great tone to end this end this episode on. As always, anyone who's made it to the end of this episode, we really, really, really appreciate you, particularly for these ones where we tend to ramble a little bit more. It's so much easier to put a lecture about cash flow forecasting together than it is to talk about the controlling the intangible parts of life and just focusing on the stuff you can. It's I see why it's a lot easier to, just teach accounting and finance than it is to teach psychology and philosophy.
Yeah. Hey, that's the real profit and the real perspective, like you said.
But for everyone still listening, we appreciate you. If there's anything you listen to and you want to tell us we're full of shit, leave a comment, send us an email, send a carrier pigeon, and we will see everybody on the next episode.